is Mercedes McLean, and I am the Outreach Manager at the Scott County Public Library. And today I'm going to be showing you how to finger knit. All you need for this easy craft is yarn and your hands. That's it. No knitting needles needed at all. And any kind of yarn will do for this project. We are going to be making a bracelet today. This is a great craft for young and old to do at home. The great thing about finger knitting is you don't need any knitting needles. Your fingers instead become the knitting needles. With that in mind, remember that your loops or stitches will be bigger than traditional knitting. Lots of people like to use chunky yarn when they're doing this craft because it is intended for larger knitting needles. Your hands are also larger. And you can do things like make scarves with chunky yarn and finger knitting. But you can see that the bracelet we are making today is done with just regular yarn, and you don't have to have chunky yarn. So let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So you can see that I am using just regular yarn, nothing fancy, and we're going to use this yarn to create our first loop. And when we are creating our first loop, we're going to want to remember to leave about a 6-inch tail from where we start making our loop. This tail is going to become important later because we're going to use this to tie our bracelet together. So from right here in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and start making my loop. And the way I'm going to do that is by my pointer finger and my middle finger. I'm going to wrap the yarn around, creating like an X almost. And then I'm going to flip my hand over and push this underneath what's there on the back and pull this out. Now slowly I'm going to start pulling this yarn. Now you're going to want to pull from the tail, okay? And you're going to see you're going to create this really nice loop by doing that, okay? This can be tricky. This might take you a couple of times to be able to do this, but just remember what you're doing is you are holding with your thumb the yarn, wrapping around your fingers, create that nice little X, okay? Create that nice little X, and then you're gonna tuck this yarn underneath. All right, this is your loop, and then you're going to slowly pull out, but you're going to want to make sure you hold on to that tail, okay? Because that tail is going to help you make the loop, all right? And you can actually then pull the other end of the yarn to loosen this and make it what size you need to put onto your pointer finger. So we're going to put this on our pointer finger. This is our very, very first loop, okay? And we can tighten it up a little bit by pulling on the tail if we need to. We can loosen it by pulling the other way, whatever feels comfortable. And then we're going to go ahead and start our weaving pattern to create our first stitches. And we're going to create an over-under pattern on our hand that is going to help us start creating those stitches. So on my pointer finger, I have an over. So I'm going to go underneath my middle finger, over my index, and under my pinky. Now we're going to want to do this again by going over the pinky, underneath, over, under, okay? Now to get our very first stitch, it's going to be really easy. We're going to take and pull the tail out of the way. So now that I have this on my hands, I'm going to take this yarn and I'm just going to lay it over my palm, okay? And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull this bottom loop over top this yarn that is here. This yarn is going to stay on your finger, and this is going to come off over the top, okay? And I always make sure to start pulling my loops off my hand from whatever direction the yarn is coming from. So that means I'm going to start here on my pointer finger pulling off the yarn. If the yarn was coming from my index, my pinky down here, then I would start pulling the yarn from that way. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. And this can be tricky. This may take you a few times, but I'm going to pull the yarn over top, keeping this yarn here on my finger. Okay. All right. And I'm going to do that for each one of my fingers. So the yarn that's on the bottom is going to come over on top and pull off. This yarn is going to go underneath. And now I have a new one. And this one is going to go over. And that is my very first stitch. Now we are going to go, and when you get to the end of a stitch, what I like to really do is just kind of tighten down the yarn a little bit on my hand, because it feels like it's coming off. And I'm going to repeat this now. So what am I going to do is I'm going to go over top of my palm, and I'm going to pull, starting from my pinky, this loop over. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that. Really, really simple. Really simple. And you can always use your other hand to kind of tap down on the yarn if you feel like you're losing it a little bit, okay? And you're just going to keep doing that. Now when you get maybe 10 or 12 of them done, you're going to start seeing a tail form in the back. And so let me go ahead and do a few more stitches. And don't be afraid of you losing your yarn either. And go as slow as you need to ensure that you're not dropping a stitch, okay? Because you don't want to drop a stitch. But you're just going to continue this weaving pattern where you're going to lay that yarn across your hand and pull over. And I really do like to kind of tap down on my yarn a little bit when I do that. Now you're going to see in the back that I've been doing this, I'm starting to kind of get loops down here. And I like to pull mine out a little bit. So sometimes, when I get to a point where it's starting to get a little loose here, I'll tap down, and then if I have a tail here, I can even kind of pull that out a little bit. So I'm going to keep doing that. And you're going to keep doing this until you have a length that you can wrap around your wrist. So if this is a kit for a child, they may not have to do as many loops. If you are an adult, you might want to make yours a little bit bigger. And you're just going to keep doing this pattern until you get a tail of where you want to be. And you can see on the back now, I'm really starting to get all of those really awesome loops. You can see all those loops. And as you get them, you can go ahead and you can tug on this a little bit to tighten stuff up, okay? And you're gonna see these are really big loops because they're the size of your fingers. But the bracelet you're making is kind of going to almost kind of wrap into itself when you tie it. So it's gonna be a little bit thicker, okay? So what are you gonna do when you get to the end and you are very much ready to go ahead and cast off, okay? So casting off is pretty simple. You were just, for the bracelet itself, it doesn't have to be perfect, really. You're just gonna wanna thread everything through, okay? So to do that, we're going to, when you get to the end, you're going to start where you started, okay? So make sure you wrap around to that pointer finger. And you're gonna pull off your first loop like you would, okay? Now, I don't know if this is the right way to do it. This is the way I've always done it though. And then I'm gonna transfer this loop to my middle finger. And I'm just gonna pull, all right? And then I'm gonna pull this loop, my middle finger loop, over it, pull off. I'm going to transfer that loop to my index, and I'm just going to cast off. And then I'm going to put that loop on my pinky, and I'm going to do the same thing, pull over and off. and then you're going to have one loop left. So you are going to cut your yarn. Make sure you leave at least 6 inches. You can always cut off the excess later. It doesn't matter. And then I'm going to take, so I have that one loop left. Okay. You can see that. And I'm just going to feed my yarn through the loop and pull. That's all I'm going to do. Okay. And you can see that that was just a few stitches, but you can see I've already got kind of that springiness that we were looking for. All right. And if it kind of seems like some of your stitches, like down here, you can kind of see is a little big one. It won't really matter, but you can kind of play with that a little bit. So I have another one done that I did. Okay, so that's long and it's got my 2 ends. And all you're gonna do to make your bracelet is you're just going to put it around your wrist and make a pretty bow. And you can cut off the extra if you don't want it. And so I just tied a bow, that's all I did. And the technique I showed you today to make this bracelet, if you use chunkier yarn, you can make scarves. You can make all kinds of stuff. But this is just a fun little craft. And you can see I made a bracelet. Alrighty, I hope you enjoyed that. And we would love, Scott County Public Library would love to see you making your own finger knitting bracelets at home as well. Okay, thanks.